potentially lethal in terms of poisoning the air, and as a result, our health will suffer. Here's another one: pet dander and feces. For those who have pets in their homes, and what they're telling us this day and age is that if you have a litter box and it has baking soda in it, and some now I think are advertising antibacterial, what would you call it? Antibacterial litter box sand or what have you. What the studies are showing is that there are respiratory issues such as respiratory tract infections, lung disease, and inflammation that can result from the pet dander and from the feces. Let's look at it this way. Remember the children of Israel, God gave them health laws that if they had to defecate, they had to go outside of the camp. Now, if you have a pet within the home and it uses the litter box, mainly we're talking about a cat, but it uses the litter box, and you don't change that, some people don't change that, scoop it out and get it out of the house immediately. They may let it sit there because some of the sand that they put in the litter boxes, it is very effective sometimes in eliminating the odor. And so they may not know, but yet that litter is still there. And especially if a person has little children, it gives off certain, not fumes, but a bacteria can develop and drift just throughout the home. When you have a ventilation system, when you turn on your central heat or your central air, there's a vent that starts pulling all the air. So it's pulling from all the rooms, even potentially where that litter box is. And so it can start circulating that through the ventilation system. Not that you're going to smell any strong smell or any such, but over a period of time, that can cause problems in addition to some of these other things that I mentioned to you. Mold. Some of our homes have mold within the homes as well. Anywhere within the home where there's a lot of moisture increases the chances of mold developing in the home. And this once again can cause respiratory tract issues. That's the main thing that you're going to see sometimes when there's poor quality air in the home. There are going to be sinus problems, or sometimes people have a buildup of mucus. And they're wondering, they say, I don't do any dairy. And they will tell you that they stopped soy, because in some instances, for some people, sometimes too much soy can actually cause a mucus buildup as well. But a person may be doing, quote, most, if not all things correct that they should be doing, but yet they're still experiencing these problems. So you want to look around that home, see if there's a pet, see if there also, within the bathrooms or so forth, there are any mold conditions. If they have a basement especially, because that's where oftentimes moisture tends to build up. Yes? Her question was, how do you get rid of the mold without using Clorox or some other strong chemical? I think you would possibly, I would want to call some specialist or some company that deals with that. Because what you don't want to do is keep going in and cleaning, keep going in and cleaning, and you're just spending more money to continue cleaning when you want someone to come in who can guarantee you that they can solve whatever the problem is. Because you may get rid of the mold, but you want to get to the source of what's causing the mold. So initially, you know, it would be advisable, strongly advisable, to go in and clean it up. But you want to find a company that can come in and deal with that and get to the source of the leakage of whatever is causing the mold itself. Yes? Right. Her comment was that normally it's some dampness or wetness that is causing the mold. So once you get rid of that particular source, and it's a very good point, you will tend to eliminate the mold. The next is, lead. You know, at one point, I think it may have been here in New York or Philadelphia, one of the others, a lot of the older homes had the lead paint in them. And the children were eating the lead, and that was causing problems for them. some brain damage, as a matter of fact. But that's something, I don't think that's a major problem with the newer homes now, but some of the older homes, especially the older homes, lead can be a problem in those homes. So you want to be weary or leery of that. And asbestos, the same issue. That's not, I think, a particular problem now, but in some of the older homes where possibly the people never had it removed, that is a potential problem there. And I would strongly suggest you're not, if you find out that you're in a home where there's asbestos in the home, not to try and remove it yourself, but a professional needs to come in and do that, because that can be potentially very dangerous in the long run for you, because it increases the risk of cancer and lung disease, possibly mainly lung cancer, I would think. Now, there's something also called the sick building syndrome. And we kind of talked about that earlier. Now, some of the results, or what you can see, are the warning signs that let you know that you're in a sick building. Eye, nose, and throat irritation. You know, even I remember working for the state of Georgia, the building that I worked in, it was a modern building, but they had no windows that would open. And now that I look back on it, I have to wonder, because oftentimes people were calling in sick a lot. Now, sometimes I know, that's just a way to get a day off from work. But as I look back on it, I wonder sometimes how legitimate that may have been. Because some of them, I even supervised some of these workers myself, they were constantly complaining with headaches. And that's one of the signs of a sick building, meaning in most of those buildings, what makes the air quality poor, when they lay the carpet, there's something sometimes that they will put beneath it that gives off fumes. Even when they lay down towel as well, there's a glue that they put down that gives off fumes as well. And when in that building there's no circulation, no fresh air coming in at all, then that can be a problem. And the windows are sealed very tight. Yes? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She mentioned carpets as well. And that's one of the things I was going to touch on as well. But some of the chemicals, even in the walls itself, when they go in and they seal some of these walls as well, some of the glues and some of the silicone gels that they use, all of these things give off fumes that are not good. And when there's no circulation of air coming into the building, that can cause a problem for the people there. Some people break out in rashes when they go into a building of such. Sinusitis, is a big problem in these buildings as well. What I strongly encourage some of my workers to do a lot, not because I was thinking that this was a problem, but sometimes you pass by the offices and you see them sitting there dozing off. I would just tell them to get up and go outside and just walk around the building for a couple of times. And this is something I would encourage you. Once again, when you're sitting down talking with people, the important thing is to be outside as much as possible, taking in fresh air. The buildings oftentimes in which most of us find ourselves, the air tends to be positively charged. And what that means is that that's a poor quality of air. You want people to get the negatively charged air, or the one that has the negative ions. And I'll touch on that a little later. Thank you, Brother Handel. He asked about, what about the little plug-ins, the Glade plug-ins, the ones that smell like pineapple, pina colada, and that gives off they're plug-ins that give off, I haven't heard of those. He was saying that there are plug-ins now that give off the negative ions. That is a new one on me, I must say. I'm not sure about those. If there's even science behind it, that's what I would like to see. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I'm definitely going to look into. And I wish I had known earlier to see what the science is behind it, if they actually work, if they actually do give off negative ions, or if they're also giving off negative ions, but also something else. In one hand, you're getting a benefit, but on the other hand, you're getting something that offsets the benefit. That's possible, I don't know, but For commercial reasons?
No, sometimes it's not as good, but
She's saying because people know that it's good, they sell such products for commercial reasons. That may be true. And I think, just from a marketing standpoint, the smart person would pick up on that and do just that, or the smart business person, I should say. But I didn't mention, though, the plugins, the Glade plugins and so on and so forth. How many of you are familiar with these? I won't ask how many use them, but that's something you want to be aware of those things. You want to be aware of those because the fumes from those over a period of time, it can cause respiratory tract problems. And many people, it seems, this day and age are suffering with respiratory issues. But yet some will say, as I mentioned earlier, they don't do dairy or any such type of thing. So these are some things you want to look at. Also, the sick building syndrome. Yes, there's a question in the back. Lysol, the spray, it's an industrial cleanser or chemical cleanser. It can be, we use Lysol ourselves, but my wife will tell you that's something that I've questioned for the longest. There are some natural cleansers out there that you can use. Lysol, I haven't read anything about Lysol in particular. One thing I can say to you though, when you look on the back and there are all these precautionary statements about that cleanser that you're using, right there, that may be your hint or your something letting you know that this is probably not a product, especially for those who have little children. And when you're dealing with a home where there are little children in the home, the least amount of these chemical cleansers that person is using, I would say the better. Because, my sister said vinegar will do just as good of a job, and she is so correct. Vinegar will do just as good of a job in terms of cleansing. Vinegar. Yes. Her question was, is it advisable not to sleep or spend a lot of time in basements? If that basement has good circulation and it's not very damp, basements are not the ideal. There's a quote, an inspiration, I thought Dr. Grivas was in here, he probably knows it, where we were told about basements, but possibly, and I say possibly because I can't speak definitively on this, the basements, some of the basements that they do in homes now are much better built. The ventilation may be there, the proper ventilation. There may not be as much moisture, and possibly because there's some dehumidifiers that you can buy that pull out all the moisture. A person would just have to look at their individual situation, and weigh it based on that. That's a kind of a tough one to say definitively on, but you want to look at certain things, how your body is responding to that basement situation, being in a basement. Are you suffering any sinus problems, any headaches, some differences that you notice when you're upstairs versus when you're downstairs? If you are noticing differences in those two environments, then more negative being downstairs versus upstairs, then I would say no, you don't want to be in that basement too long, other than maybe for storage or so forth. Right, but sometimes we have to make a choice between that and our health. So in one sense, I understand, as she was saying, some people have no other choice, and that's very true. But when you notice that your health is suffering tremendously as a result, that's a tough one. But I honestly believe there's a God that will help us out with these situations. How he will do it, only he and that person will know, but he will. He definitely will. Yes. Right. And that's kind of what I was sharing with my sister. If she noticed a difference being upstairs versus downstairs, then she needs to take note to those things and make the proper adjustments. Now, where do we find our optimum